You step outside, only to find your driveway to the garage blocked by concrete posts. The HOA chairwoman, Karen, declares, "That's what I decided, and so did my cat." But the hero didn't argue. He dug a moat and installed a drawbridge, and that was just the warm-up. My name is Jason Miller, and all I ever wanted from life was peace, stability, and for no one to park across my driveway. I grew up in New Jersey, where people argue over coffee shop lines, and the downstairs neighbors blast The Simpsons at night like they're trying to resurrect Homer with sheer volume. And so, after 13 years in IT and 2 years of therapy, I made my move to the suburbs, North Carolina, fresh air, morning lawns, the scent of lilac, and not a single shout through the walls. I chose Graceview, a quiet, picture-perfect suburb where every house looks like a remote control button, and even the dogs bark with military precision. A haven for a man who wants to disappear into calm. The streets had names like they were brainstormed by Better Homes and Gardens editors: Lavender Lane, Sunny Trail, Lilac Court. I moved to Cherry Street, and yes, there really was one old cherry tree in the yard, planted, as I later found out, by the first homeowner, in memory of his dog. That first week felt like a suburban mortgage commercial. Mrs. Hopkins brought over a pie, neighbor Tim offered to help install the mailbox, and an elderly man named Ernie walked a turtle on a string every evening. I smiled, sipped coffee on the porch, and felt, at last, I'm safe from the world. The HOA, the Homeowners Association, seemed harmless enough. Some brochures, Wednesday meetings, a rule about no bins at the curb, and so what? Bureaucracy. Who cares? The lawn was mine now, and nobody could tell me what color my curtains had to be. But what I didn't know back then was this: every paradise has its serpent. And in Graceview, that serpent wore a badge that read, Karen Thompson, HOA Chair. Karen Thompson. I first saw her on a Sunday walk. A woman in her 50s, lean, with a sharply cropped haircut and a face that looked like it had a permanent complaint against the human race. It was the kind of rare face where you feel that her glare doesn't just judge you. It's already written you a parking citation and is dialing the tow truck. She didn't say hello. She didn't say anything. Just gave me a look that said, new, naive, doesn't read the rules. I didn't think much of it at the time, but within days I realized Karen didn't just live in this neighborhood. She ran it. On the 8th day after moving in, I woke up as usual, brewed some coffee, stepped outside in my slippers, and froze. In front of my garage stood 3 concrete bollards, white, smooth, immovable. As if someone armed with silent fury and cement mix had decided to seal my path to freedom. There was a sign nearby, small but very clear. Road access restricted, HOA ruling Section 12B. I slowly circled the bollards, half expecting it to be a dream. I crouched down, touched the concrete, real, warm from the sun, as unyielding as Karen's will. I couldn't drive out. My own driveway, blocked. Not by bushes, not by tape, but by a full-on reinforced obstacle that clearly didn't go up overnight. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Wrong address, a neighborhood prank, a very expensive prank. But no. 30 minutes later, Karen herself showed up, uninvited, with a folder, marching like she wasn't here to explain, but to deliver a verdict. "Mr. Miller," she said in a voice like a court clerk, "your driveway is not registered as an approved access point. Per association regulations, you are not permitted to use it without authorization." She opened her folder, and out spilled documents. Maps, schematics, highlighted zones, signatures, sub-paragraphs with numbers no one had ever read. "It's my driveway," I said. "It was here when I bought the house. The previous owner's temporary permit expired. Your access does not conform to the 2011 approval plan. Reality tilted. It felt like the house was in the real world, and the driveway was in some kind of legal limbo. You do realize I can't leave now. You may submit a request to the committee. What committee? The Committee for Infrastructural Harmony, she said, and nodded. I later found out that this committee consisted of Karen herself, her laptop, which she affectionately called Mr. Henry, and a cat named Alexis, who allegedly possessed a keen sense of order. For the next week, I parked in the next neighborhood over. That meant walking 2 blocks every day, sometimes in the rain, sometimes carrying groceries. And every day I felt the eyes on me, not hostile. Worse, evasive, as if I were the problem, as if I had somehow brought this exile upon myself. At first, I thought, it's just unfamiliar. A new guy, a bit of fuss, it'll pass. But then I noticed Mr. Jenkins no longer nodded at me by the mailboxes. Mrs. Hopkins, the pie lady, now turned away sharply, like I had coughed in her tea. The kids who used to bike past suddenly began swerving to avoid my yard. Graceview was isolating me. No words, no shouting, just erasing me one look at a time. Then I understood. Karen had started a campaign. Subtle, clever, and completely silent. She was spreading rumors that I was disrupting community order. A vague charge that sounds like a spell when spoken by someone like her. No concrete facts, just a phrase that spreads like a yawn. They say he argues with the board. He didn't sign the shared covenant. He's anti-fence. Then came the first letter in my mailbox. Notice of visually inappropriate behavior. The reason? I looked irritated during the HOA territory walkthrough. I read it 3 times, then forwarded it to my brother. He thought it was a joke. The second letter followed. Failure to follow parking procedure. I'd stopped by the curb for 10 minutes to unload groceries. The third was almost a masterpiece, creating emotional discomfort in a public space. Because I walked past Karen without saying good morning. At the next community meeting, I decided to speak up. A final chance to explain myself, to show it was all a misunderstanding. Like an idiot, I prepared. Printed logical arguments, gathered photos of the driveway, noted the parcel's license number. The room was nearly full. Plastic chairs, a water cooler, the smell of 3-day-old coffee. Like a PTA meeting, only instead of parents, neighbors who now looked at me like I was contagious. I stood and raised my hand. I'd like to say this is a misunderstanding. I haven't. Karen didn't even let me finish. Mr. Miller, she said without looking up from her folder, you are disrupting the harmony of our community. She emphasized harmony like it was a legal clause. These aren't your rules. We live by the charter. You refuse to respect it. No one else spoke. Silence. A cough. Mrs. Patterson looked down at her shoes, and that's when I realized. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a bureaucratic mix-up or someone's oversight. This was revenge for not signing the petition for uniform fence aesthetics. Karen had come to me on day 2 after I moved in with a mock-up titled, "A White Picket Fence is the Face of Graceview." I told her I'd think about it. Apparently, you don't think with Karen. You agree. That evening, I walked home down an empty street. All the windows were closed, like the town had died. Even Ernie wasn't walking his turtle. I felt it. A slow boil rising inside. Not the kind of rage you scream with. The kind that engineers things. The kind that doesn't burn. It builds. It disassembles injustice into gears and builds a cannon of lawful revenge. That's when I knew. If they play by the rules, I'll win by their rules. Not with fists,
not with tantrums, not with outbursts at town halls, but precisely, methodically, with documents, blueprints, and official stamps. I decided I'd make Karen respect the law, the very law she hides behind like a vampire behind curtains, and I knew exactly where to start. I spent 2 evenings at the County Cadastral Archive. The digital system there was so outdated, it looked like it could still run Snake. But it was precisely there, tucked away in a folder labeled Landscape Solutions and Soil Erosion Control, that I found the key clause. The property owner has the right to implement individual drainage and surface runoff measures within the boundaries of their lot, provided that such actions do not compromise the infrastructural integrity of neighboring properties. The key word, within. Another one, individual measures. That's when I realized they had left a gap in the fence themselves, and if there's a gap in the fence, I'm walking through it. With a shovel. The very next day, I submitted an application to the local municipality. The project had a name that sounded formal, technical, respectable. Engineered drainage moat with rainwater protection functionality. I attached the following documents: a site plan, a fabricated diagram of wastewater accumulation in the corner of the lawn, a report on observed foundation erosion, written by me, signed as an independent consultant, all perfectly honest, and, of course, the blueprint of the moat. Depth, 1.2 meters, width, 2 meters. Shape, a closed loop. Location, precisely along the boundary of my property. Legally, it was flawless. I didn't violate a single regulation. I didn't touch anyone else's land. I didn't interfere with any utilities. Full compliance with safety standards. Bureaucracy loves paperwork, and I had served it an entire pie. A week later, the confirmation arrived. Application approved, construction permitted. And from that moment, my little engineering celebration began. The moat was dug by a contractor, silent, unquestioning. I paid in cash, no invoices. He did ask once or twice, "Are you sure this is about drainage?" "Yes," I answered. "Just very serious drainage." By the 4th day, my property resembled a miniature late medieval fortress. Around the perimeter stretched a deep trench, neatly executed, even marked with OSHA-compliant signage. I supervised the entire process myself, standing on the porch in sunglasses, coffee in hand, like a field commander in a vest. Karen showed up on the 3rd day. She stood by the road, squinting, jotting something down in her notebook. I waved at her. She didn't wave back. She knew exactly what was going on, but she couldn't do a thing about it. On the 6th day, I installed the drawbridge. A real one. Not a joke. Not some decorative fantasy. A fully functional metal construction built by a crew who once worked on installations for a theme park called Southern Nights. The bridge operated via remote control, a small black fob, one click, and the structure slowly descended over the moat. Bridge down, I drive in. Bridge up, and I'm safe. No more concrete bollards, no more memos, no more board meetings. Karen came back the next day, just as I lowered the bridge for the first time. She stood at the edge of the trench with that same look on her face, like I'd handed her someone else's half-drunk soda without asking. I walked up, pressed the button, and the bridge lifted slowly, slicing the air with a quiet, mechanical whir. What is this nonsense?" she asked. "My private engineering project, approved, legal, registered with the land office." "You're isolating yourself." "No," I replied, looking down at her. "I'm protecting myself," and added, "by the book." She left without a word. Didn't even glance back. Now, every morning begins with the press of a button. I drive out over the moat, past neighbors who've started greeting me again, Not because they've understood anything, but because they respect the bridge. Karen doesn't show up anymore. But I know, she knows, that I haven't broken a single law. Not one clause, all by the charter, exactly the way they taught us. And you know what the best part is? In the Graceview Cadastral Registry, my property is now officially listed as private estate with partial isolation from public infrastructure. Sounds almost like a title, and I like it. Karen showed up as usual, uninvited, unannounced, but armed with a complaint. This time, though, she wore a look of righteous fury. Evidently, last night's rain had added fuel to the fire, or rather, water to the moat. "You're endangering the neighborhood," she yelled, standing at the very edge of my miniature quarry. I was on the opposite bank, on the wooden platform of the bridge, shaded by my porch, a cup of coffee in one hand, the remote in the other. Click. The bridge began to rise slowly, issuing that same sound that always seemed to carry authority, a gentle, steady hum of the motor, like the sigh of a courtroom before sentencing. Water trickled down the concrete walls of the moat. It was clear, mirroring the clouds, and already a pair of ducks had discovered it. Somehow they'd found their way there and decided this was their new family lake. I took a sip of coffee. "I have a certified drainage system, Karen." I said it almost sweetly, like I was offering comfort. "But you are abusing your authority." She opened her mouth as if to respond, but all that came out was a hiss of breath, and what remained was a sheet of paper in her hand, trembling from rage and rain. A month later, precisely 4 weeks after the bridge first rose, Graceview received an unannounced inspection from the city. They arrived with tablets, measuring tapes, and questions about overreach of jurisdiction and property owners' rights to private access. They left without a word. 2 days later, Karen received a $3,000 fine for unauthorized access restriction and overstepping HOA authority, plus an official mandate for an early board re-election. She tried to fight it, filed appeals, petitions, complaints, but it was all so pathetic, like a school hall monitor trying to stop a bullet train, one with permits, a scheduled route, and tickets already sold. The re-election meeting was packed. Neighbors who had been silent for so long finally stepped out of hiding. Turned out Karen had worn everyone down. They'd just never dared challenge her. Until me. I was elected unanimously. Irony? Maybe. But next to my name on the ballot was a bold check mark, and someone had scribbled next to it in pen, "The Bridge Master." Now, every Friday at 7 a.m., Karen drives past my house. She moves slowly, never stops, but her eyes always drift toward the moat. It's deeper now. There are water lilies planted along the edge. And the ducks? Real, with ducklings. I named the brood the Committee. I stand on the bridge with my coffee mug, sometimes in a robe, sometimes in a t-shirt that says, "Due process is beautiful." And I simply stare down at the water, at the reflection of the sky, the trees, and Karen flickering past in the window of her passing sedan. I don't say a word. I don't have to. Sometimes the highest form of revenge is order, especially when it comes with a button. And all of it absolutely legal.